Hi, good afternoon. This is Lee Furseth from the Headwater Science Center. I'm very happy to be with you today, and I'm taking off my mask. I'm all by myself right now, so, well, not by myself. Here's Orion. Orion's with me. As you can already see, Orion's not happy with the selection of stories I made today. You've been following this every Wednesday, 3:30. I've been reading books. And you know, when I started this about, well, it must be 3 months ago now, Orion said, books about rabbits. And I said, well, I'm not going to only read books about rabbits. He said, well, no large carnivores. Today, it's about kitties. That would be cats and specifically stray cats. More about that in a little bit. Now, would a cat be a large carnivore? Well, a cat is definitely a carnivore, so that would be true. And large carnivore in relationship to a rabbit, would a cat, in other words, chase down, kill a rabbit, maybe eat the rabbit? I don't know. Certainly their wild cousins would. Lynx and bobcats would hunt down and eat rabbits, so we would have that. Would a cat do that? My suspicion is there are cats that would. So I totally understand as Orion has turned his back to the story because today is about cats. They are by James Herriot, and I'm talking about more than one book today. In fact, there's 3. I'll tell you about the 3rd book if we get to it. But this one right here, called Moses the Kitten, is about a stray cat. So I want to dedicate today's reading to a marvelous nonprofit located here in Bemidji, Minnesota. I'm going to pull up their website and show it to you. It's sitting on my phone. You heard my phone just a little bit ago. And here it is. The name of this nonprofit is called the Great River Rescue. It's located here in Bemidji, and I want to read you their mission statement because the Great River Rescue would first of all, would love hearing and reading a story about stray cats and the marvelous people that decide to take them into their home. Great River Rescue transitions dogs and cats to loving homes, serves as a community resource, and advocates for kind, responsible pets. Our vision, it says, Great River Rescue envisions a society of responsible animal guardians in which every animal is treated with respect and care. So today is dedicated to the Great River Rescue, and here's book number 1, Moses the Kitten by James Herriot. Just a bit about the name. Moses the Kitten, the name Moses comes from a Bible story in which there is a baby. The baby is put in a basket, is floated down the Nile, gets in amongst the bulrushes on the shoreline of the river, and is rescued by a princess who then adopts that baby, and that baby gets named Moses. The kitty gets named Moses, and now you have a pretty good idea. As you can see, Orion's not going to listen at all, so I'm going to hold the book right here. And Orion, if he turns around, I'll have to reposition a bit. But for now, just so you can see the pictures, here we go with Moses the Kitten. There have been times in the winter when I have regretted being a vet. Remember, vet short for doctor of veterinarian medicine, or at least veterinarian. Vet's the shortened version of that. And he regrets being a vet. And this looked like one of them. I had driven about 10 miles from home thinking all the time that the Dales, that's the name of this land, the Dales always look their coldest not when they're covered with snow, but as now, when the first sprinkling streaked the bare flanks of the fells in bars of black and white, like the ribs of a crouching beast. And now in front of me was a farm gate rattling on its hinges as the wind shook it. The car, heaterless and drafty as it was, seemed like a haven in an uncharitable world, and I gripped the steering wheel tightly with my woolen gloved hands for a moment before opening the door. The wind almost tore the handle right from my fingers as I got out. But I managed to crash the door shut before stumbling over the frozen mud to the gate. Muffled as I was in a heavy coat and scarf pulled up to my ears, I could feel the icy gusts biting at my face, whipping up my nose and hammering painfully into the air spaces in my head. Guess he's trying to tell you it was pretty cold. We in Bemidji, Minnesota know all about cold, don't we? Although today happens to be right towards the end of February, and it's pretty warm for a day in February, right at about freezing. So this is unusually warm for us. I had driven through and streamy-eyed was about to get back in the car when I noticed something unusual. There was a frozen pond just off the path, and among the rime-covered rushes, these are rushes, amongst the rime-covered rushes which fringed the dead opacity of the surface, a small object stood out shiny black. A long way to say that he saw a shiny black object right there on the edge of the pond. That object ends up being, yes, you got it, a cat. I went over and looked closer. It was a tiny cat, probably 6 weeks old, huddled and immobile, eyes tightly closed. Bending down, I poked gently at the furry body. Can you see him doing that? Poking away, just trying to see if it's alive, right? He must be dead. A morsel like this couldn't possibly survive in such cold, but no, there was a spark of life because the mouth opened soundlessly for a second, then closed. Quickly, I lifted the little creature and tucked it into my coat. You can see in the picture there, he's tucking that kitten away in the coat. Forgot to tell you at the beginning of this story, yes, they put the cat in the oven. Now I'm going to tell you, do not do that at home unless you know exactly what they're doing. But this cat's about to end up in the oven. Yes, I've let the cat out of the bag. What a pun. Yes, I told you what's coming up in the story, but I wanted to warn you, don't go and put your cats in the oven. That's what they're about to do, although it ends up working mighty fine. Anyway, quickly I lifted the little creature and tucked it into my coat. As I drove into the farmyard, I called to the farmer who was carrying 2 buckets out to the calf house. I've got one of your kittens here, Mr. Butler. It must have strayed outside. Mr. Butler put down his buckets and looked blank. Kitten? We haven't got no kittens at present. I showed him my find and he looked more puzzled. In other words, the farmer looked more puzzled. He's trying to figure it out. Well, there's no black cats on this spot. We've got all sorts of colors, but no black ones. Well, he must have come from somewhere else, I said. Though I can't imagine anything so small traveling far away. It's rather mysterious. Oh, all right. Hey, we have a special request. I'd love to live up to this one. There's some listeners out there who I think are feeling bad for Orion. Not only is he having to hear a story about a cat, but I'm not even paying attention to him. So we're going to take a little time out and do a little petting of Orion. Oh, hey, thanks for writing in, and I'm glad you're concerned about Orion, as you should be, because he said, look, I don't want to hear about carnivores. Today's is a story about carnivores. I held the kitten out and he engulfed it with his big, rough hands. Look at that. The cat fits right within his fingers. So we're at least talking about a very small kitten. Poor little beggar. He's only just alive. I'll take him into the house and see if the missus can do aught for him. In the farm kitchen, Mrs. Butler was all concerned. Oh, what a shame. She smoothed back the bedraggled hair with one finger. And it's got such a pretty face. She looked up at me. What is it, anyway? A him or a her? I took a quick look just behind his legs. It's a Tom. Right, she said. I'll get him some warm milk into him. But first of all, we'll give him the old cure. She went over to the fireside oven on the big black kitchen range, opened the door, and popped him inside. So I know this is hard to see. By the way, this book, I got it at the library, so you could go and order the book as soon as I can get it back there, and you could have a look at it yourself. If we look at the picture real carefully, in the oven, you can see the cat. Now, if that oven doesn't look like your oven, I totally understand. This is an oven that even has wood as the way they heat the oven. So there's the kitten in the oven. By the way, don't try this at home. I smiled. It was a classic procedure when newborn lambs were found suffering from the cold and exposure. Into the oven they went, and the results were often dramatic. Mrs. Butler left the door partly open, and I could just see the little black figure inside. He didn't seem to care much. what was happening to him. By the way, we have another cat here, don't we? Taking a look. Maybe he's taking a look at the black kitten. And just a picture, just showing what's going on. Now, James Harriet, the veterinarian, had been called out to take care of this calf, and that's what he's doing there. He's going to comment a little bit on that as we turn the page. The next hour I spent in the briar wrestling with the hind feet of a cow. The cleats were overgrown and grossly misshapen and upturned, causing the animal to hobble along on her heels. My job was to pare and hack away the excess horn, and my long-held opinion that the hind feet of a cow was never meant to be handled by man was thoroughly and completely confirmed. So he's trimming away some of the excess hooves and trying to make that more comfortable for the cow. That's what he's doing. We had a rope round the hock and the leg pulled up over a beam in the roof, but the leg still pistoned back and forth while I hung on till my teeth rattled. By the time I had finished, the sweat was running into my eyes. I had quite forgotten how cold it was that day outside. Still, I thought as I eased the kinks from my spine when I had finished, there were compensations. There was the satisfaction in the sight of the cow standing comfortably on two almost normal feet. Well, that's something, Mr. Butler grunted. Come in the house and wash your hands. In the kitchen, I bent over the brown earthenware sink. I kept glancing round at the oven. You know why he's glancing at the oven, right? Mrs. Butler laughed. Oh, he's still with us. Come and have a look. It was difficult to see the kitten in the dark interior, but when I spotted him, I put up my hand and touched him, and he turned his head towards me. He's coming round, I said. That hour in there has worked wonders. Doesn't often fail, the farmer's wife lifted him out. I think he's a tough little one. She began to spoon warm milk into the tiny mouth. I reckon we'll have him lapping in a day or two. Lapping? That's the term for what a kitten would do when drinking milk from a bowl. That would be lapping it up. We often refer to cats and dogs, by the way, of lapping. You're going to keep him then. Too true we are. I'm going to call him Moses. Moses? Aye, you found him amongst the rushes, didn't you? I laughed. That's right. It's a good name. I was on the Butler farm about a fortnight later. Now, a fortnight, how long would fortnight be? If a fortnight was later, there's a good thing for you to do yourself. Go look it up on the internet. We're talking about how long between the visits from James Harriet until he's back on the farm. Farmers rarely have their cats indoors, and I thought that if the black kitten had survived, he would be out there joining the feline colony around the buildings. Farm cats have a pretty good time. They may not get petted, but it has always seemed to me that they lead a free and natural life. They're expected to catch mice, not rabbits, by the way. They're expected to catch mice, but if they are not so inclined, there's an abundant food at hand. Bowls of milk here and there, dogs' dishes to be raided if there's anything interesting left over. I have seen plenty of cats around today, some flitting nervously away, others friendly and purring. There was a tabby loping gracefully across the cobbles. There was a big tortoiseshell, which was curled up on a bed of straw at the warm end of the briar. Cats are connoisseurs of comfort. Now there's a word for it. Cats are connoisseurs of comfort. When Mr. Butler went to fetch some hot water, I had a quick look in the Bullock house, and a white Tom regarded me placidly from between the bars of the hay rack, where he had been taking a siesta. Ooh, a little Spanish in his book, a little siesta. But there was no sign of Moses. I finished drying my hands and was about to make a casual reference to the kitten when Mr. Butler handed me my jacket. "Come round here with me if you got a minute," he said. "I've got something to show you." I followed him through the door at the end and across a passage into a long, low, roofed piggery. He stopped at the pen about halfway down and pointed inside. "Look here," he said. I leaned over the wall and my face must have shown my astonishment because the farmer burst into a shout of laughter. "That's something new for you, isn't it?" All right, here comes a picture, because they're standing outside the pig pen and pointing away at that picture right there. I'll give you a little bit of time to take a nice long look. Yes, Orion's still not interested, but this is a pretty interesting photo. I stared unbelievingly down at the large sow stretched comfortably on her side, suckling a litter of about 12 piglets, and right in the middle of that long pink row, furry black incongruous, was Moses. He had a teat in his mouth and was absorbing the nourishment with the same rapt enjoyment as his smooth-skinned fellows on either side. "What the devil?" I gasped. Mr. Butler was still laughing. "I thought you'd never had seen anything like that before." "I never have," any road. But how did it happen? I still couldn't drag my eyes away. "It was the missus' idea," he replied. "When she got the little youth lapping milk, she took him out to find a right warm spot for him in the buildings. She settled on this pen because the sow, Bertha, yes, a female pig is called a sow, Bertha had just given a litter, and I had a heater in here, and it was grand and cozy." I said, "That sounds just about right." "Well, she put Moses and the bowl of milk in here," the farmer went on, "but the little feller didn't stay by the heater very long, and next time I looked, he was around at the milk bar." I shrugged my shoulders. "They say you see something new every day at this game, but this is something I've never seen before. Anyway, he looks well. Does he actually live on the sow's milk, or does he still drink from his bowl?" "A bit of both, I reckon," said the farmer. "It's hard to say. Anyway, whatever mixture Moses was getting, he grew rapidly into a sleek, handsome animal with an unusually high gloss to his coat, which may or may not have been due to the pork element of his diet. I never went to the Butlers without having a look in the pig pen. Bertha, his foster mother, seemed to find nothing unusual in the hairy intruder, and pushed him around casually with pleased grunts, just as she did the rest of her brood. Moses, for his part, appeared to find the society of pigs very congenial. When the piglets curled up together and settled down for a sleep, Moses would be somewhere in the heap. When his young colleagues were weaned at 8 weeks, he showed his attachment to Bertha by staying most of the time with her. Weaned? Now there's a good term for you too. You know, we won't stop to figure out what all the words mean. That leaves something for you to do. Weaned. What does it mean? Weaned at 6 weeks. And it stayed that way over the years. Often he would be right inside the pen, rubbing himself happily against the comforted bulk of the sow. But I remember him best in his favorite place, crouching on the wall, looking down perhaps meditatively on what had been his first warm home. So there's a cat. He was definitely a stray. That's the definition of stray. They never did establish really how he got to where he was. And there we have somebody who took Moses in. In fact, named Moses, took Moses in, and then treated Moses as their own cat. So that's definitely fostering a cat. Here's the second book for today, and I told you we'd have 2. We might have time for 3. We'll see how it goes. This one, too, is about a stray cat. And again, today, we're dedicating today to the Great River Rescue, located right here in Bemidji, Minnesota, where I'm quite certain if you went to their website, you'd see some cats, maybe similar to the ones you're seeing today. This one's called Oscar Cat about town. No cat stories next week? That's what Orion's asking for. No more cat stories next week. He's kind of putting up with it now, but here we go. I looked at the stray cat, which a kind little girl had brought to my examining room. He was very pretty with stripes of auburn, gold, and gray, but he looked terribly thin and ill. The little girl said that nobody knew where the cat had come from, so she left him with me. So this little girl finds the cat. She leaves him with James Herriot. And I want you to know, the Headwaters Science Center from time to time will take an animal. It's very rare that we will, because we think especially wild animals should stay in the wild. So bringing an animal here, we will typically turn that down. Just the other day, I think it was last Wednesday, somebody brought a frog in. Now that was pretty unusual, a frog in the middle of February. Brought in a frog and wondered if we'd take the frog and put him in one of our aquariums. We agreed to that one. How come? Well, we thought it's sure to turn cold again and maybe this frog would end up freezing to death. So that was the reason. Like I said, we typically don't take animals here at the Headwaters Science Center, but we did take that frog. So here's a cat. Cat's been brought to James Herriot's office, or animal hospital. The little girl said that nobody knew where the cat had come from, so she left him with me. With my wife Helen by my side, I examined him thoroughly and found that he was suffering from starvation. But the strange thing was, he purred loudly all the time. He's so weak that he can hardly stand, but he's purring away, I said. You can see he's a good-natured cat. For a few days, Helen gave him beef broth and milk to make him strong, and when he walked into the kitchen to eat some of Sam's dinner, you can guess this must be Sam the dog. Yes, again, we're kind of straying far away from rabbits, aren't we? Sam the dog. Sam's dinner for meat and biscuits. We knew he was well again. What shall we? We shall call him Oscar, Helen said. You mean you want to keep him? Yes. He's a lovely, friendly cat, and he's so pretty. And since we don't know who owns him, he must stay with us. He and Sam seem to get along so well. Oscar purred his approval, and his big purr became part of our lives. Oscar had been with us for several weeks when I came home and found Helen looking very worried. It's Oscar. He's gone, she said. What do you mean? I think he's run away. I became worried too because I knew he had run away from somewhere before we found him, and it made me sad to think that we might be going to lose our cat after we'd grown so fond of him. In the darkness, Helen and I searched all over the garden and the lane behind the house. Then, although it had begun to rain heavily, we began to explore the streets and the side alleys of the little town of Derby. After 2 hours, we couldn't find him, and Helen had tears in her eyes. I think we better go home, Jim, she said. He's gone. I know he has. On our way home, we passed the brightly lit window of the Women's Institute Hall. I stopped suddenly. I think I see Oscar in there, I cried. We both peered in through the window. You can kind of see that? And then I'll hold it even closer in just a minute. And to our delight, there was our cat with the lady. Now this is really tough to see. And this book is from the library too, so I'll get it back to the library as soon as I possibly can, and then you can go ahead and check it out yourself. And maybe, just maybe, when you get it, you'll remember to look to this page. There's Oscar. We ran inside. They were having a hat making competition in progress. Various ladies were lined up wearing some very unusual, but dare I say, pretty hats. Oscar was walking along with the judge, listening to her comments, examining each hat as though he were one of the judges. Sometimes he jumped up in the air to have even a closer look. When we were able to reach Oscar, he was delighted to see us. He purred and he rubbed around our legs. One of the ladies said that he had been there for the whole evening and had seemed to enjoy himself thoroughly. We now know where Oscar was. It was lovely to have him back again. But one afternoon a week later, he disappeared again. Helen and I looked everywhere, and again we were just about ready to give up hope when we heard two women speaking as they came out of the Derby's town hall. Yes, you can find a town hall in Bemidji. Town halls were relatively common back in those days, but they're not so uncommon yet today. Did you see that funny cat in there? One of them said, laughing. I've never seen one like him. Helen and I looked at each other and hurried into the hall where a rummage was taking place. And there was Oscar, right in the thick of things. A rummage, we might say a rummage sale, garage sale. This one's a rummage. There he is at the rummage. He was stepping daintily along the display tables. He was inspecting the old shoes, books, pictures, ornaments, crockery, and he looked really happy. Now and then he cocked his head from one side to the other when something caught his fancy. Once more, it was clear that he was enjoying every minute of it, and we didn't want to disturb him, but the sale was soon over, and then he greeted us with joy. When he went missing again the very following Saturday, we were not so worried this time. We knew, well, he must be somewhere. Derby School is playing Wickley School at soccer today, Helen said. We rushed round to the soccer field, and as we expected, there was Oscar. There amongst the spectators, running along the line, following the ball, jumping up and down at the cheering. We let him enjoy himself for a while before bringing him home, and then we had a chat by the fireside. We're going to have a chat. Now we know, said Helen. I nodded. Yes. When he disappears, he isn't running away at all. He's just visiting. He likes getting around. He loves people, especially groups. And he's interested in what they do. He's a natural mixer. Helen looked down at our cat. Of course, that's it. He's a socialite. Exactly. He's a high stepper. He's a swinger. He's a cat about town. We both laughed. Not only because it was a funny idea, but because we were relieved that Oscar wasn't going to run away after all. Oscar seemed to be laughing too, like it was some joke. He looked up at us, adding his loud, throbbing purr to the merriment. We were all happy and everything seemed to be perfect. But a few days later, we received an unexpected blow. As it turns out, Oscar isn't an abandoned cat after all. Abandoned meaning left behind by somebody. I was finishing my office hours. I looked around the door in the waiting room and saw only a man and two little red-headed boys. Helen came in and began to tidy up the magazines that were on the table. The man had a rough, weathered face of a farmer, and he twirled his cloth hat nervously on his nervously in his hands. Mr. Harriet, he said, my name is Sepp Gibbons, and I think you've got my cat. What makes you think that? I said in surprise. Well, when we moved from Derby to Wickley, the cat went missing. We thought he might be trying to find his way back home. We hunted everywhere. We can't find him. My boys are broken-hearted. They loved that cat. But why do you think we've got him? Well, my boys were playing soccer last week, and they were sure they spotted him watching the game. He always liked to be with people, go to meetings and social events, so I just had to come and find out. This cat was lost, I asked. Why? What did he look like? Sort of tabby, but with gingery stripes. He was very handsome. My heart thumped. That sounded very much like Oscar. I could see that Helen was worried too. Just a moment, she said. Oscar's in the kitchen. I'll bring him through. When she returned with the cat in her arms, the little boys called out, Tiger! Oh, Tiger! That's our cat, all right, said Mr. Gibbons. And doesn't he look well? The boys called him Tiger because of those gingery stripes. He looked at the two boys flopping happily on the floor as Oscar purred loudly with delight, rolled around them. The boys used to play with him like that for hours. They cried a lot when we lost him. Well, Mr. Gibbons, said Helen, with a catch in her voice, you'd better take him. He was your cat first, and you searched for him so hard, and I can see that the boys love him. Well, that's very kind of you. Please come and see him whenever you like. Wickley is only 20 miles away. I picked up Oscar and left. Don't think about that. 20 miles away. They moved to Wickley from Derry. 20 miles away. We missed Oscar terribly, but we knew we had done the right thing. He really belonged to the Gibbons family, who loved him and would be kind to him. One afternoon, we were out shopping in the nearby town, and I looked at my watch. It was only 5 o'clock. Why don't we go and see Oscar at Wickley, in Wickley? It's not far from here. The Gibbons cottage was at the far end of the Wickley village, and when Mrs. Gibbons opened the door to us, she didn't know who we were. But when she heard the name Harriet, she was delighted to see us. Come in, she said. Come in and have a cup of tea, she said. We were inside and we were greeted by Sepp and the boys. Remember Sepp and the boys? We looked eagerly around the room for Oscar, and within a few moments, he trotted in. He took one look at Helen and then jumped into her lap. He rubbed his face against her hand. He knows me, Helen cried in delight. Yes, Sepp said, you were kind to him, and he'll never forget you. We won't either. I tickled the cat's cheek as he lay curled happily on Helen's lap. However, after about half an hour, he gave her a final rub and purr, and then jumped down and trotted from the room and back into the garden. Mrs. Gibbons laughed. He still goes visiting. Let's see, Thursday, isn't it? That's when he goes and hears the brass band practice down at the village hall. It's just next door, and he slips through a hole in the hedge. Oh, let's go and see him, Helen said. So we popped around there, and when we finished our tea, we'll pop around there when we finished our tea, said Mrs. Gibbons. In the village hall, we all stood in a row and watched Oscar moving among the band players, jumping in delight, creeping close to the slide of the trombone, which seemed to fascinate him. There's Oscar, I said. There's Tiger, said one of the boys, and we all laughed. It doesn't matter what we call him, said Sepp. He belongs to all of us. Here you are. There he gets to be in a picture. Now, I know I've gone a bit long, but I do have just a third story, and this will wrap it up for cats for today. Now, this one should be a complete abomination to Orion. It should. The title, it's a little covered up by the library sticker there. This story is called, get ready for this, Millions of Cats. Millions of Cats. I understand if you particularly don't like this one. Once upon a time, there was a very old man and a very old woman. They lived in a nice clean house which had flowers all around it, except where the door was. But they couldn't be happy because they were so very lonely. If only we had a cat, sighed the very old woman. A cat? Asked the very old man. Yes, a sweet little fluffy cat, said the very old woman. I will get you a cat, my dear, said the very old man. And he set out over the hills to look for one. He climbed up, if only he had known about Great River Rescue here in Bemidji. He's headed off over the hills to look for one. He climbed over the sunny hills. He trudged through the cool valleys. He walked a long, long time, and at last he came to a hill which was quite covered with cats. Cats here, cats there, cats and kittens everywhere, hundreds of cats, thousands of cats, millions and billions and trillions of cats. Oh, cried the old man joyfully, now I can choose the prettiest cat and take it home with me. So he chose one. It was white. But just as he was about to leave, he saw another one, all black and white, and it seemed just as pretty as the first one, so he took that one too. But just then he saw a fuzzy gray kitten way over there, which was every bit as pretty as the others, so he took it too. And now he saw one way down in the corner, which he loved too lovely to leave, so he took this one too. And just then, over there, the very old man found a kitten, which was black and very beautiful. It would be a shame to leave that one, said the very old man, so he took that one too. And now over there he saw a cat, which had brown and yellow stripes, like a baby tiger. I simply must take it, cried the very old man, and he did. And so it happened that every time the very old man looked up, he saw another cat, which was so pretty he could not bear to leave it. And before he knew it, he had chosen them all. And so he went back over the sunny hills and down through the cool valleys to show all the pretty kittens to the very old woman. It was very funny to see those hundreds and thousands and millions and billions and trillions of cats following him. They came to a pond. Mew, mew, we're thirsty, cried the hundreds of cats, thousands of cats, millions and billions and trillions of cats. Well, here is a great deal of water, said the very old man. Each cat took a sip of water, and the pond was gone. Mew, mew, now we are hungry, said the hundreds of cats, thousands of cats, millions and billions and trillions of cats. There is much grass on the hill, said the very old man. Each cat ate a mouthful of grass, and not a blade was left. Pretty soon, the very old woman saw them coming. My dear, she cried, what are you doing? I asked for one little cat, and what do I see? Cats here, cats there, cats and kittens everywhere. Hundreds of cats, thousands of cats, millions and billions and trillions of cats. But we can never feed them all, said the very old woman. They will eat us out of house and home. I never thought of that, said the very old man. What shall we do? The very old woman thought for a while, and then she said, I know. We'll let the cats decide which one we should keep. Oh, yes, said the very old man. So he called to the cats. Which one of you is the prettiest? I am, no, I am. No, I am's the prettiest. I am. And the argument continued between the hundreds of cats, thousands of cats, millions and billions and trillions of cats, and they began to quarrel. They bit and scratched and clawed each other and made such a great noise that the very old man and the very old woman ran into the house as fast as they could. But they did not like such quarreling. But after a while the noise stopped, and the very old man and the very old woman peeped outside the windows to see what had happened. They could not see a single cat. I think they must have all eaten each other up, said the very old man. It's too bad. But look, said the very old woman. And they pointed to a bunch of high grass, and in it was one little frightened kitten. And they went out and picked it up. It was thin and scraggly. Poor little kitty, said the very old woman. Poor little kitty, said the very old man. How does it happen that you were not eaten up with the hundreds and thousands and millions and billions and trillions of cats? Oh, I'm just a very homely little cat, said the kitten. So when you asked who was the prettiest, I didn't say anything, so no one ever bothered about me. They took the kitten inside the house, where the very old woman gave it a warm bath. I don't think she could give a cat a warm bath. I just think you should. But she brushed its hair until it was soft and shiny. Now that sounds like a good idea. Every day they gave it plenty of milk, and soon it grew to become a nice, plump kitten. And it was a very pretty cat, after all, said the very old woman. And it is the most beautiful cat in the whole world, said the very old man. I have to know, I've seen hundreds of cats, thousands of cats, millions and billions and trillions of cats, and not one was as pretty as this one. That wraps it up for today. I promise you, Orion, I promise you, no cat stories next week. That was certainly enough. Thanks for tuning in today. We do this every day at 3:30, and sometimes it's a science experiment. Sometimes we talk about animals. Sometimes we read to Orion. Happens here at 3:30. The Headwater Science Center is now open Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and Mondays, 9:30 to 5:30 on Fridays, Saturdays, and Mondays. And on Sunday afternoons, we go from 1 to 5:30. Thank you very much for tuning in.